Welcome back. Today I'm going to analyze one of my games from very recently in which the game review said I had 9 mistakes in 13 moves, fairly early in the game. I'm going to try to categorize those mistakes into ones I can learn from and ones that I just can't understand at this point in my chess learning career. But I'm not going to explain all these moves of the opening, just take you up to the first one. My opponent played the modern, so I took extra space in the center, more than I normally try to, more, protecting these pawns. Here as I go into move 6, it says I have more than a 1-point advantage. My opponent has already messed up. But I did not play one of the best 3 moves here, and now we're close to even, and my opponent did play their best move. Okay, so I have a very slight advantage at this point, according to Stockfish, and now we're transitioning from the opening to the middle game. Still not entirely done with the opening. I have some piece development left to do, some castling left to do. Obviously, my opponent has not fully developed yet either. But my opponent has, by queen b6, made a direct threat on this undefended pawn, which is hiding a trapped rook. The engine says I should move knight to c3. It's been saying that's my top move for about the last 4 moves, I think. 3 or 4 moves. Ever since I moved the c-pawn up here. I was hesitant to do that just because I thought at that point they would take this pawn. It's free. And at that point, the knight would be unguarded. So I thought the only way out of that was b3. I did also consider one of these queen moves. In the past, when I've learned that when the queen goes here, I can often just put my queen right in front of it. And sometimes we sit there for 4 or 5 moves while the opponent decides what to do. Because if they take me, I'll take back and I'll have free to rook. And I guess they know that. And I don't take theirs for the same reason. And then it kind of locks in that pawn and that rook for that while those queens sit there. And usually one of us ends up moving the queen later or bringing another piece to bear on the situation. But anyway, here I played b3. And I'm not sure why that's a mistake, and I'm trying to figure out why. It's saying now that's a mistake if and only if black does one of 2 things. If they take my d-pawn with either their bishop or this pawn right now. If they take with the pawn, it basically made b3 a blunder for me because it gives 4 points to black, whereas I had a slight advantage close to even before. And I guess the reason is because this queen is here, it is adding to that. So whereas I only have 2 pieces defending my d-pawn, black has 3 now. Once they take with this pawn, if I take back, they can take back. And if I take back, they can take back. And they'll have a queen sitting right in the middle of the board with my 2 bishops, my bishop and my knight gone, and their bishop gone. And of course, these 2 pawns would be gone with the queen sitting right there. And the queen would be pointing at this still undefended rook. Okay. So I understand why that's bad. I do. So, what I should have done, it says, was knight to c3. What I don't understand is how that prevents this, because it's not adding another defender to the center. So I'm going to move my knight to c3 as I should have, and it's still saying that black should take here. And if they do, it's a fork of these 2 pieces, is it not? That would be their best move. Now it's saying it would be a mistake for them at this point to take my b-pawn. Because now the rook is defended by the queen, and because I could move my knight to b5, threatening a fork up here. Anyway. Okay. That's what I was worried about, but apparently it would be bad for them to do that. But they should still do this. And now what am I supposed to do to get out of it? Okay. Danger levels is what I'm supposed to. Whoops, is what I'm supposed to do instead of just moving one of those pieces and letting them take it. I'm supposed to put my knight here, which directly threatens the queen. Now the queen needs to run away someplace. It can capture here. Wait, the computer's actually saying it wouldn't be a mistake or a blunder for them to just go ahead and take this pawn and let me have their queen. That's... Really? Wouldn't I just take their queen at that point? And then what would they do? They would check, and then I would capture it, and then they would capture here. Okay, and I have an advantage, but not a huge one. Okay. It's okay because we both have 2 rooks and a bishop and a knight, but they have an extra bishop and a knight for my queen. But their pawn structure is, I mean, more messed up than mine. I think I would have a, I don't know, I think I would have a bigger advantage for that. Okay, but regardless, back to my blunder. I do understand why that, I mean, my mistake. I do understand why that's a mistake now, is because it allows this, which ends up just tearing things apart. I end up losing a piece and maybe even more. Okay, so, but I did that, and my opponent did not take in the middle with either of those pieces, as the engine suggests. They also did not make the third best move. My opponent played that, which turned out to be a mistake on their part in renewing our equality. Okay. Now, this next move, I think was counted as a mistake as well. Now here, I'm just supposed to go ahead and take that. I think. No, I'm just supposed to play h3 and leave the center stuff alone. Oh, because they've blocked their bishop. Okay. But I don't understand what h3 does. Were they planning on coming in here? Maybe they were. Regardless, I did that. That's a mistake. I did that thinking I would put my knight here, which would add protection to all 3 of those pieces. And then I could get my my rook out right here, protected by my queen and pointing there. That was my idea. But my opponent took advantage of that mistake. And that was the reason I was supposed to have moved h3. Okay, so I do understand that mistake as well. All right, next. Was my next move a mistake? Yes, it was. All right. I thought I was moving my bishop out of danger. What should I have done instead? Again, I should have played knight to c3. And every other move was a mistake or a blunder, according to the engine. I was not planning on going to c3 in this position anyway, so I don't think I would have done it. What was knight to c3 gonna do? I do understand why I should have moved h3 on the previous move. Whoops, because this knight is attacking this bishop. So it makes sense for me to move this bishop right now. But it's saying I should just ignore the attack on my bishop and put my knight here. And they're not going to take my bishop. Probably. Now they're going to come in here like they always were. And then it's the same situation as before. They're going to come in here, and I'm going to put my knight there, threatening their queen. But why? Okay, but it's also good for them to take the bishop, because now they're threatening my queen, and I have to mess up my king pawn structure to defend it. And it looks like I'm going to end up with that being the safest square for my king. Okay. But what I played, bishop to f4, I don't understand why that's a mistake. It saves the bishop. It's a mistake because it still allows this, but now that pawn move's not attacking anything. See, I thought I was solving 2 problems with this bishop move. Okay, so they didn't do this, but let's say that they did. And then I would castle. And white's up 4 percentage points no matter which of those best moves that they play. Knight to c5, which attacks a protected bishop. e5. I can see how e5 is a problem. It would force my bishop back, one way or the other. Or a5 even, starting a queenside attack. At my level, I'm not seeing how that's a big problem right now. But my opponent did not play c captures d4 at this point, or b captures d4 as the engine is suggesting, or g5 even, which is an interesting idea. Why wouldn't I just take g5? Oh, it says I would. Okay, my opponent played e5 here, which gives back all the advantage to me if I just take it with my pawn. I didn't take with my pawn. I moved my bishop back out of the way of that threat, thinking that if they took me, that it would lock up that pawn structure, and then their bishop couldn't get through because their own pawn is sitting here. This pawn couldn't do anything. Their own pawn is sitting there, and the queen then is locked out of that diagonal as well. The knight wouldn't be able to go here because that pawn can't move. So I thought this was safer, to move this bishop back and let them take this and just be a pawn down, a center pawn down, and I would be okay with that. But it says they only have two moves that are not a blunder, and one is to take this pawn and one is to take that pawn. But I did that, and that's a blunder because now they can take this pawn, which again, I had already thought. And they did. This time my opponent did play the best move. They took this pawn. And I don't see... I mean, to me, it looks like... I think this is my mistake number 3 here that we're looking at. This looks like what I intended when I decided to let them take that pawn. This bishop now, which is one of the strongest pieces in this position, supposedly, this fianchettoed bishop, is just dead in the water. Can't do any... Well, I mean, it can come here, but I'm not sure how much it can accomplish from there, especially since it looks like I'm about to castle. This pawn's not going anywhere, certainly not now. The queen has blocked itself off. Now this knight can come in. That might be one problem with this position. This knight can come in and then support possibly the a-pawn advance. I see that. And maybe that's why it's suggesting a3 is one of my better moves. Or knight to b2, to d2. But I'm way down here, it says. I thought by locking up this center here with black's own pawns was a good idea. And I'm not sure that black understood the huge advantage of this position. But yeah, it definitely looks like from the engine that black should be moving a5 here pretty soon. I did my third best move in this position, which was to castle. And so that wasn't counted as a mistake or a blunder. And okay, so knight to c5 was one of the plans here, to bring one of the minor pieces to the center, which would be looking at this pawn, which would be supporting an eventual a-pawn advance over here. Or they can castle now. Yeah, knight to c5 or a5 or castling is what they should be doing. Now here, my opponent did not understand the advantage that I had just given them, apparently, and played knight to f8. I have no idea what that was about. That was counted as a mistake on their part. I think maybe they were trying to reroute through here, but again, I'm not sure where that was supposed to be going. They've blocked their own route to castling and negated their own awesome move that the computer was saying that they should do. Okay. That I would have counted as a mistake on their part even without the engine, just because of it undevelops a piece basically and blocks further development. So now I'm supposed to kick this knight out. Okay, that makes sense. This knight's in an irritating spot. It makes sense to push the pawn up and kick it back. A3. I'm still not seeing A3 right now in my head, or why that's good. It looks like it removes the defender of the B pawn. Maybe the idea is that right now my queen is guarding the B pawn, and if I have this pawn on A3, then I can move the B pawn up one. Maybe that's the idea. I'm really not sure. Yeah, it is saying on that line that my next move would probably be moving the B pawn up to kind of gain incremental space on that side. Or C5. That's my second best move. That I do not understand at all. That looks like it just gives up a pawn. Either way, right? What if I did C5? Wouldn't... Oh, they wouldn't take with this at all. They would have to take with the queen to maintain any advantage at all. What's so bad about taking with that one? That's really bad, it says. But only if I play H3 now. If I do anything else, that's just a fine move for them. Okay. But we didn't do any of that, so let's back up. After they moved that back, I played knight to A3. That's a mistake. Yeah. I can't explain why I did that, because originally my intention was to put it on D2 to help guard those pawns. So I don't know what I was thinking there, other than maybe coming in this way, guarded by the C pawn. Okay, I know why that's a mistake. It doesn't do anything, and in fact, I think slows down my own development, and it blocks in my A pawn, which I might need to move soon. All right, but it's only a really bad mistake if my opponent brings this knight back out, either to where it was or to a new square, or if they put the queen here. They did none of those things. I don't know why that's so bad for them, though, because it's preparing castling. It's a developing move. It puts a bishop on a whatever. Yeah, I don't understand why that was so bad for them. But again, it's only bad if I play C5, which I'm never going to play in this position. It just looks like it gives up a pawn. And again, we encountered that. That was my second best move last turn. I don't understand why either one of those moves is really bad. Now in this position, I understand why taking back with the queen would be really bad. Or no, even that wouldn't be bad. If I moved here and they took with the queen, and we queen trade, how is that bad for them? They gain space. Take one of my major defenders away, and then they can support the C pawn by a B push. Yeah, I'll never see that. Okay. Well, what I played here was much worse than that, was this. And again, I can't explain that move. I have no idea why I did that. But it's only really bad if black moves that, or this, or takes it now. And they did none of those things. So I understand why this isn't great. But they did that, which turns out to be not one of their best moves. But to me, it looks like a good move because it forces my knight to come back, which is what I did. But look at the evaluation. My only good move here is to undefend that knight and push my C-pawn again. Again, that's one I'm not going to understand. The C-pawn thing over and over. So I brought the knight back, which turns out to be a really bad mistake. And again, they're supposed to get this knight out from in the way of their king so they can castle. Or they're supposed to bring the rook to their semi-open c-file, which I'm apparently supposed to be breaking open. But I really don't want to right now with my queen down here. Or queen to c5, which keeps me from playing c5. But I'm not going to play c5, so there's no reason to keep me from playing c5. If I were black here, I might play queen to c7, maybe. And then I could push the b-pawn or something. Well, they long castled here, which was the reason they had moved the bishop out a second ago. But that turns out to be a blunder. If I move c5. Or h3. Not h3 again makes sense because it makes sense to kick the knight out. I shouldn't want the knight here. I should want the knight back there someplace. And so the h3 thing makes sense to me. Again, the c5 is not going to make sense at any point for me. Rook f to b1 is not going to make sense to me. Not at all. I could see rook a to b1, but rook f to b1 just blocks in this rook for good, or for a long time. So I would have to be much... Oh wow, the engine Stockfish is still working on this, but now it's definitely saying that's the best. I could even see it to c1 to get behind my queen, and then maybe I would think, oh, well, the king's here now, so maybe now I might see pushing the c-pawn once my rook's over there. But I'm going to have to go through years of training before I understand why that's any good. If any of you guys know, feel free to say in the comments right here. This is the one that's boggling my mind. Why in the world would I want to block in my a rook, completely and fully trap it there by moving the f rook here? Why is that my best move? Does anyone know? Also, that gives my knight no place to come back to. If anybody has any idea why b1 is the place to go, let me know. All right, what I did here was that. It's a one-move empty threat on the rook. So I understand that that's not great. I don't understand why it's so horrible, because the rook can just sidestep. But look at the engine. Black shouldn't want to sidestep here. Black should want to move the knight here and just let me take the rook. And the engine thinks I wouldn't even take it. Now they could block that with the f-pawn advance, which doesn't seem horrible to me. Reasonable. Or bishop to f6. Oh, that would have been good. It would have been guarded by the knight backwards. Well, they didn't see any of those. They moved the rook aside, which turns out to be a mistake. But again, I'm not judging their mistakes. I'm judging mine. Okay, now here I finally played h3. It's what, my third best move? Okay, but again, c5 is my best move. Now, see, now it's saying rook f to c1. That one makes sense. I get that one. A move ago it wanted me to put it over on b1, but I'm not going to get that. I do understand c1. Okay. I'm still not understanding c5. Not until I have something, guarding that. But I did finally play h3. Good. So I kicked the knight out. Okay. I've lost track, but I think we're at 5 mistakes of mine, or 6 already. Okay, the knight went back as I wanted it to. And now I need to play c5. What's that, the 6th, 7th time it said that's my best move? Okay, and rook f to c1. I do that again. I get that one. Or queen to d2. Not sure I get that one. What does queen to d2 do? Well, it's not great, it says, but it's my third best move. I don't understand any of that. What I did was saw that there was an undefended pawn back here. So I went after it. Because right now my opponent is up a pawn. So I thought I could hop in there. That I don't think was counted as a mistake. I think that was just counted as an inaccuracy. Don't remember for sure. But I'm not done with my mistakes yet. And I have no idea here why my opponent... Wait, it says they should go here? To attack the undefended knight. Okay, see, I understand queen to b4 to attack my undefended knight. I get that. It would force me to put my knight back in its undeveloped square back here. They did their second best move, which I have no idea what that does. Because, again, I was just coming after this undefended pawn. Which I did, and now that turns out to be my best move. Okay, so good for me. I made the best move for the first time in this whole stream here. Okay. And now they need to move this because I'm about to take it. Although it says they should still get this knight out. That's still their best move. Well, they did their about even second best move, which is move the rook out of danger, which that's fine. I wasn't really going for the rook. I just wanted to take the undefended pawn. And my knight is still safe in there, believe it or not. And again, I'm supposed to play c5. Okay, somebody, just like I asked earlier, somebody to explain rook f to b1 earlier, I need someone, if I have any viewers at all, that understand why c5 has been so important throughout this entire series of moves. Please tell me. Please say why c5 has been so important this whole time, when it can just be taken with either the pawn, which undoubles their pawns, or taken by the queen, which forces a queen trade, which is good for the defense. At least I've always been told that. Right now their queen is a defensive piece, is it not? Anyway, and rook f to c1. Again, I understand that one, but I didn't see it. And I don't understand queen to d2 other than it allows me to get the knight back. Okay, I understand queen to d2. But I decided my knight was done in there and needed to come back, so that's what I did. And that was a mistake. But it's only a mistake if my opponent plays h6, apparently. Or queen to b4 to attack my other undefended knight, which can't go anywhere now. Well, I mean, it can come back. Or rook to c8 is what they should be doing. Well, they played the best of those moves, which was to go there, which is fine. I was on my way to bringing my knight back anyway. It says it would actually be better to put it back in there. How about that? Well, I didn't think of that. I put it back where it came from, which was the whole idea, to help me to defend all this stuff down here. But that was, I think that last one was my last mistake. Right here was pulling the knight back. That was my ninth mistake in 13 moves. Okay, well, as we saw, I did understand some of the mistakes and why they were mistakes. They were mistakes because they weren't my best moves, not necessarily mistakes in the sense of hanging a piece. But it was positional and almost always related to c5 and me not playing rook over here. But again, I do understand rook to fc1. So if any of you can explain why pawn to c5 was the best move in all those scenarios, or that a couple of times where it wanted me to put my f rook over there, that would be incredibly helpful if anyone could explain that. I did end up winning this game, by the way, despite all these mistakes. Apparently my opponent was just as befuddled by the position as I was. But thank you if you stuck out this far, thank you for that. And thank you for watching all these videos. And a double, extra, triple helping of thank you to anyone who can explain those moves that I completely do not understand.